Mr. Jensen lived close to the town center. He had a small house with a garden. Mr. Jensen liked his garden very much. It had a lot of beautiful flowers that bloomed in summer, pink, yellow, and red. Mr. Jensen liked spending time in his garden in the evenings and on weekends. But Mr. Jensen also had to go to work. He worked in an office that wasn't near to his house, so he often went to work on the bus. He came home on the bus too. Mr. Jensen was a lonely man. He didn't have many friends, and he didn't talk to many people. Because of this, he often felt sad and bored. One very hot day, Mr. Jensen decided to walk home. He didn't want to take the bus that day. He wanted to walk in the warm sun. In one street, there was a small shop. Mr. Jensen looked into the window. There were very old things in the window, and Mr. Jensen liked old things. So he went into the shop.
"Good evening,"
said the man in the shop.
"Good evening. Can I take a look around your shop?"
Mr. Jensen asked.
"Please do."
The shopkeeper replied. Mr. Jensen looked at the things in the shop. He saw an old doll with a sad face. It wasn't a pretty face, but Mr. Jensen liked it. The doll was a little old man with white hair and dark brown clothes. Mr. Jensen thought.
Maybe the doll is lonely too.
He asked.
How much do you want for this old doll?
The shopkeeper thought for a moment.
"That one? £4.
He replied. Mr. Jensen wanted the doll. Why? He didn't know, but he wanted it. £4 was a lot of money for an old doll, but Mr. Jensen paid it. He went out with the doll in his hand. He looked at its face.
Is it smiling?
He wondered.
No, it's only a doll.
He thought. He said to the doll,
I'm going to take you home.
The doll didn't answer. It was only a doll. So why did Mr. Jensen speak to it? Maybe because he was lonely. He put it in his briefcase along with his papers from the office. Mr. Jensen was tired now, so he got on the bus. The bus conductor came for Mr. Jensen's money, and he bought a ticket. Suddenly, somebody on the bus spoke.
Go away, you stupid man! Go away!
Everybody on the bus looked at Mr. Jensen.
Did he say that?
They wondered. The ticket conductor was angry with Mr. Jensen.
Why did he say that?
He wondered. He gave Mr. Jensen a ticket and then walked away. He didn't like Mr. Jensen. When Mr. Jensen got home, he was very tired.
Who spoke on the bus?
He wondered. He didn't know. He took the doll out of his briefcase and looked at it. It was just a doll. It wasn't very pretty. In fact, it was quite ugly, but it had a smile on its face.
That's strange,
thought Mr. Jensen. He put the doll on the table and ate his dinner. Mr. Jensen wasn't very hungry, so he only ate some beans and bread. Then he went to bed and slept. He forgot about the doll, which remained on the table. Morning came, and the sun shined into the room. Mr. Jensen opened his eyes. There was something on his bed.
What is it?
He wondered. He looked, and he saw the doll.
But I left it on the table. It can't walk. It's only a doll.
It was very strange. Mr. Jensen couldn't understand it. Mr. Jensen went to the front door.
Are there any letters for me?
He wondered. Yes, there were 2 letters with his name and address. But what was this? The letters were open. Who opened them? Mr. Jensen didn't know. Mr. Jensen ate his breakfast. Then he went to the bus stop and waited. His bus arrived and stopped for him. Mr. Jensen got on the bus with his briefcase and sat down. There were a lot of people on the bus. One old woman looked tired and couldn't find a seat. Mr. Jensen was a kind person. He stood up and offered his seat to her, and she sat down. Then suddenly, somebody spoke.
You stupid old woman.
The woman turned and looked at Mr. Jensen. She was very angry. Mr. Jensen's face turned red as he felt embarrassed. Then he remembered the doll. He got off the bus. He couldn't understand it.
That doll's at home. Or is it?
He thought. Mr. Jensen opened his briefcase and looked inside. The doll was there with a big smile on its ugly face. He put the doll down on the street and walked away, leaving it behind. Then he went to work.
Today's the end of that doll,
he said to himself. Mr. Jensen worked hard all day. After work, he walked to the bus stop. But what was that? To his surprise, the doll was at the bus stop. Mr. Jensen saw the white hair, brown clothes, and the smile on the it's face.
What's happening? It was waiting for me. It's not just a doll. What is it?
He wondered. He turned and ran away from the bus stop. He decided to walk home. He had to walk 4 kilometers to his house. He was very tired. Mr. Jensen sat down in a chair and went to sleep. He slept for 2 hours. Suddenly, a loud sound came from another room. Mr. Jensen opened his eyes.
What's wrong?
He wondered. He went into the other room. The doll was there again, sitting on the table, looking at him. Mr. Jensen's cups and plates were all thrown on the floor.
It's not just a doll, and it isn't a friend. This is difficult. What should I do?
Mr. Jensen thought. He took the doll to the garden and buried it in the ground.
That's truly the end of you. You're under the ground now. You can't get out of here,
said Mr. Jensen. Mr. Jensen returned home as usual. He watched television and liked lying on the couch. At 10 o'clock, he went to bed. The house was dark and quiet. But an hour later, there was a sudden noise. Mr. Jensen sat up in bed, feeling cold and afraid.
What was that noise?
He wondered. The noise was coming from the back door. Mr. Jensen was frightened, but he gathered courage and opened the door. To his shock, it was the doll again. It was dirty from being buried, but it looked at Mr. Jensen and smiled. It was a chilling smile, and Mr. Jensen was very frightened. He looked at the doll and said,
Go away. Please, go away.
The doll didn't speak. It just smiled again. Mr. Jensen was very angry now. He took the doll to the garden again. He found some wood, and he made a big fire. He lit the fire. Then he put the doll on the top of the fire.
Now die. It's different this time. This will be the end of you,
Mr. Jensen said. He smiled as he watched the fire burn hot and red. The fire got bigger and bigger. Suddenly there was a loud cry, and people ran out of their houses.
What's wrong?
They shouted.
There's a huge fire in Mr. Jensen's garden. Look.
Somebody said. Indeed, there was a huge fire. The people searched the house and garden, but couldn't find Mr. Jensen. But on the ground, near the fire, they found a doll with white hair and brown clothes. It wasn't a pretty doll, and it had a smile on its face.